Fabulous. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Cheers. My name is Susan Crossman. I am a writer, editor, and coach in Toronto, Canada. With me today is my collaborative partner, Tom Gray, an internet marketing expert in Denver, Colorado.
Good
And we
morning.
also, good morning. And we also have Janet Rouss, who is a strategic and creative branding expert who helps businesses get the results they want by helping them make a really strong emotional connection between their brand and their ideal target audience. Janet offers branding expertise to entrepreneurs and small and medium-sized businesses. And she focuses on businesses that only want to reach their ideal client. She's got some really amazing techniques for ensuring that that happens. And Janet created the Get Real branding approach to business branding, which is supported by her forthcoming book called Get Real Branding, and that's an essential guide to creating more meaningful brand connections for small businesses. Janet worked for many years as the creative director in some of Toronto's absolute top advertising agencies, and she's developed award-winning programs in advertising, sales, sales promotion, events marketing, B2B publishing, and an awful lot more. So we are really, really honored to have you here with us today, Janet, and thank you for joining us on our Content with Clout interview about how we can all be using our online marketing to further our marketing and our branding goals for business.
Thank you, Susan. It's a pleasure to be here. And I'm exhausted just listening to that bio. I can't believe I did all of that.
Aren't you amazing?
And
I'm
more
just
to
I'm
come.
just envious.
Yeah, no, Janet, it really is an honor. You've done an awful lot of amazing things, and we're so glad that you could join us here.
Thank you. Well, I'm excited to be on my very first Google Hangouts, actually. This is, I love the technology, and I'm excited. I want to use this actually in the future, so this is
Yeah.
awesome. Thank you for introducing me to it.
Well, it wouldn't happen without Tom. 'Cause
Yeah, it's
much
it's
as I love the internet.
it's definitely, although all this technology definitely kind of keeps the learning curve. It seems I never get on top of it. I'm always kind of struggling up the slope of it.
Isn't it
However,
true?
yeah, it truly is, and but it's a great bit of technology, and hopefully we'll get better at it the more we use it, and hopefully they won't change it too fast. But we're all just to kind of dive back in right in. You're a branding expert, and branding has certainly become kind of a hot topic over the last several years, and it doesn't seem to be losing any of its steam. So, kind of, why don't we start out by from your perspective, Janet, what does a brand mean to you, and how do you explain it to your customers, particularly those who come and say, "Why do I need a brand?"
Well, as you know, large brands have been working on their branding for years, and I think what's happening now, just in the environment, is there's a lot of small business and entrepreneurs starting up, and they don't really understand why they need it and what it is, and why it's so important for their business. So the way I position it with my clients, I often just start out with the very rudimentary explanation that a brand is a noun. It's a person, place, or thing. It's a personality. A brand is something that has an identity that lives on its own. Oftentimes, solopreneurs or it's people that are just one business shops will think that they're the brand. And in essence, there's a piece of it that is true, but I believe that business lives between you as a business owner and your clients. So I say that brand is that entity. It's like a third entity that lives between you and your clients. Where branding is a verb, and branding is the action or interaction, if you will, that your brand has in the community or in the marketplace or with your clients, and indeed even with yourself. So it's really important to understand that distinction, that when you're creating a brand, you're actually creating a whole new personality or a whole new identity.
And Janet, is that then that brand identity somehow is representative of your products and services, I guess? Is that how that works?
Yeah, and I often will talk to clients about branding their business as one entity, and I like to think about it as sort of an umbrella. So if your business brand has a certain personality, then you can also brand individual products that fall underneath that brand umbrella. So it's really helping to keep your brand, your business brand, congruent with your product brands, because examples like Dove, which was one of my past clients, they would have Dove products, but they were all under the umbrella of that corporate, that sort of that larger master brand. Unilever, for example, is another example of where corporate brand is a Unilever brand, but they have a lot of different product brands underneath them. So in a smaller context, when we're talking about small business and entrepreneurs, I often work with them to get their corporate or their business brand sorted out first, create the identity for that, and then we can start to look at the sub-brands, the product brands that fall underneath that. And oftentimes those product brands will speak to different audiences. So there's some nuances that we play with around that.
So Susan is Crossman Communications, and I'm Gray E-Marketing Solutions.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've kind of, and a lot of, and I worked with, for a long time, most of my practice was working with relatively prominent keynote speakers and so forth. And of course their brand then becomes their identity, and a lot of small business, particularly consultants and so forth, use some iteration of their name as a part of the branding. Is that a good strategy, or should you think a little bit further down the road with respect to that?
My philosophy on that, and it's interesting that you talked about speakers, because I work with a lot of speakers as well, and I do believe that if you are on stage, if you are a personality, I mean the Oprahs of the world, that type of thing, and even again in the smaller speaking circuits, you are the brand. You definitely need to have your name as top billing. What happens with a lot of speakers is that they end up creating training programs or additional products. And sometimes what we look at for speakers is having, again, an umbrella, like an institute for training. So actually several of clients of mine who are speakers also have an institute that lies underneath them. So what it does is it enables them to leverage their content, and ultimately if they want to grow their business and have other people executing sort of product delivery, then they can execute that under their corporate umbrella or their sort of larger brand umbrella, but ultimately their brand name is very much still forefront. And I highly recommend that if you do plan on doing speaking, and for small business, speaking and running workshops and that type of thing are a great selling tool. So it's really quite important to have your name branded. That way I also look at social media. I'm a strong believer that you should brand your social media identity as your name. How often have you been on Twitter or, and you're talking to somebody with some coded name that you probably met somewhere, but you have no idea that that's their ID. So there's inconsistency there. So I believe that using your name is a powerful positioning. And again, if you're looking at a business that you want to leverage and grow, then you want to maybe look at doing something that's a little bit more of an umbrella brand.
Okay. And that would speak to, so our collaboration together is, we're, the name that we're using for our collaboration is Content with Clout. Mm-hmm. So, which allows it, which kind of divorces it from the two separate identities and creates a third identity of which we're a part.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that I would consider to be a kind of a master brand product. So again, Coca-Cola, it's sort of your Coca-Cola version of we're collaborating to create this content with Clout, and as a brand, like a product brand, an overarching product brand, and underneath that you would have little sub products that you would sell or offer in terms of how you deliver that content.
And I guess too, Janet, that's all. Pardon me. I didn't want to cut you off there. But what jumped into my mind is that this almost speaks to all the different ways people experience your company or your brand in the marketplace. Then it's about people's experience of who you are and what you deliver. Is it?
So when I talk about brand experience, it aligns with what I call the branding or the interaction. When I work with my clients, I kind of work in three spaces. One is getting clear around brand strategy. One is getting creative, and that is the brand experience. And getting clients is around sales and marketing. So brand experience is really about what you're doing with your brand after you get really clear on your strategy, how you bring it to life. And basically brand experience, I have a big, huge list that I'm happy to share with people if they want a copy of this. But I have a list of probably 50 or more brand experiences, and it's basically everything from your company name, your logo, your email signature, your outgoing voicemail. Like it goes all the way through the experience of awareness, conversion, sales, and follow-up. So it's everything that touches your client along that way. I just bought something from Photo Jojo, and Tom, if you don't know about this website, you've got to go check it out because it's all tech all the time. And there is brand experience from the moment I landed, not even before I was referred by a client or a friend of mine to go and check this out because I needed a little thing for my iPhone. And the experience on the website was hilarious. I wanted to buy more just because I was having so much fun. And then when I went to pick up my package at the UPS store, not only was I excited about getting my product, but their invoice, you'd think something as simple as a packing slip or an invoice could be just so boring. Well, they made it hilariously fun. And after I took all the products out of the box, there was like a little plastic dinosaur in the box. So just everything about that brand experience is so incredible. And I always encourage my clients, like, it's not just an invoice. It's not just an email that you're sending. Create something more exciting and fun with it, and make sure it aligns, obviously, with the personality of your brand. But there really is. I mean, brand experience is so vast.
Little overwhelming.
So if you've got a very small company, and you obviously, I've always thought of brands in terms of companies with big advertising budgets and so forth, and kind of gets back to my original question. But brands now seem to have transitioned from the big corporate world, the Procter and Gamble's, the Coca-Colas, the General Motors, and so forth, down to a very kind of a micro level. How is a brand experience different at the lower end of the market that's for a smaller organization than it is, say, for our very large brethren in the marketplace?
The beautiful thing about the small business owner or the entrepreneur is that they can be much more personable, and their niche or their target market is much smaller, so you can really show through your personality in a lot of ways. It's simple things like what your network, how you network, what associations you belong to is part of your brand experience, who you align with. Like, obviously, the both of you have decided to create a partnership together, and that is also part of both of your brand experiences. Even though you're doing it together, I mean, it's going to hit in both of you, your businesses individually. So really, the brand experience happens at all levels. It doesn't matter what size you are in terms of a company, and you don't have to spend a lot of money to reach out to a larger audience. I mean, brand experiences is as simple as how you decorate your header in Facebook. I mean, all of that stuff has to be all consistent with your brand message.
And it makes sense, Janet, I think, to hire somebody like you. Well, hire you
hire me.
to get some clarity on what that brand is. And I think I've had a sneak peek at your book. And one of the things that I was really struck by was how much detail you go into around values, because that didn't seem to me to be an automatic connection there, that values are part of branding. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I'm quite unique in the way that I approach this, because the truth of the matter is that we if we have a need, and I talk about needs on 5 different levels, and that's how we create value propositions. But basically, if we have a need, we're going to pay for something, for that need to be met, a need, desire, want. We're going to have, there's going to be some kind of value about getting those needs or desires met. And that is how we create the value proposition for brands. And when I look at the value proposition for brands, I like to use the analogy of, it depends on my audience who I'm talking to, but I often use different analogies to demonstrate what brand values are. So when I look at the very basic level, when we think about value, we often think about it just as a money story. So what is the pricing values? We really look at how you package your products, how you price your products, where you are in the pricing structure against your competition. So that's level 1. Level 2 is really about the value of the outcome. What's the benefit? What is it that the transformation or what they're going to get at the end of it? Is it going to actually meet my needs? Is it going to function as it's promised? What's your brand promise, and how are you going to follow, make sure that happens? Then on the 3rd level, we're talking about emotional value. And this is something that we all, we see it all the time, and I'll use the big references again, but Coke doesn't sell Coke, they sell happiness now. I mean, it might be a little stretch for some, but, really that's how they wrap up their brand. And I went down to Atlanta, they take you on a tour of the happiness factory. So emotion
wow.
Emotion in marketing and branding is huge. So you need to know where your clients are at an emotional level, where they are, and it's always about moving people away from a certain emotion and towards another emotion. So we do a lot of deep digging around the value proposition that you have on an emotional level. And then I talk about what I call the etheric, or the social tribal connection. And that when you walk into a room, if you go to a party, or you walk into an environment or a networking group where oftentimes you're instantly drawn to somebody, there's almost like a magnetic energy interaction that happens, and other people maybe not so much. So there's actually a connection to an energetic connection. And Tom, I know you love this stuff, but we kind of we start getting a little etheric here. But there is actually that tribal connection that we talk about has a value, and it's like a status or a badge value. And you see that again with the Nike symbol or the Lululemon, people that wear the badge of that status. And it doesn't have to be a high level status. It can be at any level. But so we look at that value.
As small business people, how can we incorporate that a badge or a status issue into our businesses?
Oftentimes it comes up as our credibility. So what was our experience in the past? So often I work with clients who have been VPs of corporate, in corporate, and we say, okay, well, who are your ideal audiences? Is somebody that is in that level or has been in that level, and there's a credibility, there's a recognition, there's a respect factor around that. So there are a lot of different badges that we carry and that we've earned over our lives, and I truly believe that as individual business owners, we need to optimize that as a value proposition. And then on the top level, and I was actually at the Art of Marketing last month here in Toronto, and the founder of Twitter, Biz Stone, he was a co-founder of Twitter, his whole talk was around marketing with meaning, and that was the future of marketing. So that 5th level of value proposition is really, what do you stand for? What's your big why and what it is that you're doing? And if you can align with a company or with your clients on what that big why is, oftentimes that will be sort of the deciding factor. That will be the key value proposition that you have to offer that makes you stand out from your competition. And when I talk about this, I often say, if you get clear on what those values are, get clear on your brand, you'll be the only solution for your ideal client. Because if you can hit people on all 5 of those levels, then I think you've, it's an easy conversion. Makes sales easier, makes marketing easier. You know what you stand for, and people trust that. So values are huge.
You know what occurred to me when you're talking about that, and particularly that last bit, it just seemed to me that what this kind of translates to from the business perspective is that you want to do business, and I think maybe you want your brand to convey this aspect. You want to do business with people who are passionate about their business. It seems that you can use a brand to convey that passion. That I went over to that Photo Jojo site, and it did. It's like stepping into a carnival. I mean, it's if you're epileptic, be careful. But it was like, fun, and just looking at it looks fun. The colors, the schemes, the arrangement, and it seems that when I'm my most authentic in terms of my representing my business, it's when I'm passionate about it. It's not mundane. It's not the everyday, the ordinary. It's the kind of passion about it. How does that relate to the brand story that you're trying to tell and the brand experience you're trying to share?
Well, I think it comes into the big why. It's like, why is it that you're doing what you're doing? Really, I mean, a lot of us are, corporate. In corporate recovery, a lot of us a lot of people are doing that, particularly with the baby boomers moving away from corporate jobs where they've got some freedom, they've got the ability to go out and choose whatever it is that they want to do to make a business out of. That it's really something that you love to do and that you're passionate about doing, because that passion will come through to your client and attract business to you like nobody's business. If you have a real clear idea of what it is that you offer, and you have, obviously you have to have products that people want to buy, and you have to have outcomes that people need. But if you're passionate about it, it's infectious. That's part of the emotional equation too. Is like, what are people needing at that particular moment in time when they're looking for the product or service that you're offering, and understanding that if you can be really excited about it, then it's like it's contagious. That's the word I'm looking for.
The other thing that came out of sneaking a peek at your book, Janet, was I thought it was really interesting. You talked about tribes, and this idea that our ideal clients are they're members of our tribes, and we want to be connected to them. But I'm wondering, like, as a small business person, is it ideal to create a tribe around me, or find a tribe that I belong to? Is there an ideal way of going about doing that? Well, this gets to the sales and marketing part of things, I guess.
Yeah, and I a dear friend of mine, I use that friend term loosely, but I met Seth Godin at the marketing conference, and he is a lovely man. He is my hero, absolutely. And Seth really kind of coined that term tribe outside of other cultures that use the term tribe in terms of marketing. And there's a great video out there, and I'll have to get the link, but there's a fellow dancing. I don't know if you've ever seen this. There's a fellow dancing at a concert, and he's just dancing wildly. And he's probably dancing wildly for a good, 15, 20 minutes, and then all of a sudden he starts, attracting another guy. Another guy comes over and starts dancing wildly. And within the course of maybe half an hour, there was 30 people that had gone over and started dancing wildly around this man, and that he created sort of a movement, if you will, or attracted a tribe with his sheer passion for what it was that he was doing. And I thought that was such a poignant example of how, when we're really, really passionate about what we do, and we do have something to offer on those 5 levels, that we can attract a tribe towards us. We can attract the people that are really meant to be part of our community and part of our marketing. And that again comes with clarity. It comes with understanding, very clearly who it is that you are and what you stand, what you have to offer in business.
And communicating that, well, for this purpose, online particularly.
Yeah.
Well, it seems, just to interject too, the thing that I caught from that story, that this guy was up there and he was dancing for 15 or 20 minutes before he started to attract it, which I think, in my mind, also talks about the importance to kind of stay the course, even though you may be the only one dancing for a while, that eventually, if you're consistent and persistent, that you'll begin to build that tribe and your message will begin to spread. Is that your experience?
Absolutely, and I think that consistency, I would say that a lot of, most entrepreneurs, I would say, have a real passion for what they do, and they have a stick-to-itiveness that they need. Results don't always show up as quickly as we want them to, and sometimes the sales cycles are longer depending on what it is that you're selling. But it's all about building those relationships. And if you think about relationships in general, I mean, they build up over time, and you have to build that get to know you, get to like you, get to trust you factor, regardless of whether it's a personal relationship or a business relationship. So being consistent in your messaging and being consistent in your experience, the brand experience, or the customer touch points that we talked about, is key, because if I see you once in one scenario and then I see you in another scenario and you're saying something different and the messages are confusing, then I start to wonder, well, what really are you standing for here? I'm not really understanding that, this is all part of a cohesive message. So there is a lot of planning that goes into the front end of that to get it right, and then once you've got really clear, again, things just sort of show up. I was actually, funny story, I was speaking at a conference a couple weeks ago down in Buffalo, and if you go to my site, you'll see this, everything is green. I've got a green theme, with my branding, and I have a top that matches my slides, like I'm a little, beyond, and everything is green, and I was setting up my table, and all of a sudden this green apple showed up underneath all the papers I was clearing. I was like, okay, so somebody sent me this green apple, to match everything else that I was doing, because I was teaching. So it's funny when you become really super clear about who you are as a brand. It's natural the way things sort of fall out moving forward.
Oh, that's neat. So, Janet, can I ask this question then? As a small business person, how do you work with small business people to help them get clear on it? It sounds like there's quite an intricate process involved on how you analyze and assess what needs to be done. For small businesses who've never worked with a branding expert, what does that mean?
Well, and this is the part that I found actually quite like a bit of a hole in the market, and why I created this was I went through this experience myself when I rebranded myself in my business, and I thought, there was no, in my mind, there was no logical follow these steps, and even though I have all this background, it's, obviously the hardest thing to do is do your own process on yourself. But I thought, I'm going to create this process. As I go through this process myself, I'm going to package it and create it. And that's why I created Get Real. And Get Real is actually a 7-stage process that I take people through. And I generally get pretty good results working with clients just within 5 weeks. So I have worksheets that we work through. I work with them one-on-one. We meet once a week. They have homework. We kind of gather together all the content that I need, and then we develop that brand personality together. And it's really an amazing process. It's incredible what comes out of it sometimes. I had one client who's now spending the summer in Milan working with a client that she wouldn't have met if it wasn't, for the fact that we've gone through this process together. So there's been pretty incredible results, and it's very simple. I've just broken it down because that's what I do. I take complex concepts and I break them down into little, bite-sized chunks so people can wrap their head around it, and I help them through it. So, yeah.
So as you work with your clients to get clarity and to kind of formulate their brand and the brand experience and so forth, Susan and I are about, we're about content, not only creating compelling content that attracts, that both attracts um, a tribe, I suppose, in using that language, and also then, enables, entices or excites them to do business with you.
Mm-hmm.
So how does branding translate to the content that you share with your community? How should you imbue your content, I guess, with your brand? What's the process involved in that?
Well, one of the stages that I take my clients through, and it is actually the T in Get Real, and the T stands for Tribe, and it is really about the outreach. And anybody that has worked in marketing knows anything about marketing. There's always research. There's always insights that you have to pull into your strategy. And those are conversations. If we want some qualitative research, we get into some conversations with clients. Often my clients will just speak to their clients directly, or sometimes I work, on behalf of them and interview their clients so that we can get some insights content. Sometimes we do SurveyMonkey or Fluid surveys online to get feedback, but I love the good old conversation to get the content, and it's really about listening deeply to the language and using their language, because really when you articulate your brand's value proposition, you want to be able to speak in the language that your clients are speaking in. When I interviewed people about my branding process, there was a lot about confusion. I'm so confused and I'm so stuck. So that's a lot of the words that I use when I'm creating content. And on my sales pages or on my website, I really focus on trying to get that language connection. Again, as you know, in the world of SEO, keyword searches are important. So you want to know what kind of keywords they're looking for. In general content, I like to align it with your brand. Like, my brand is very much about nature. I have some tools that I use to help people understand what I call the brand intelligence, so their innate intelligence around their brand. That often informs how you wrap your content. So a lot of my blogs, any of the writing that I do online always has a connection back to nature. So it might be the analogy of, that I use to set up the blog, or, that sort of thing. So there's a beautiful marriage between what it is that your clients are looking for, what their pain points are, what it is that they need, and how you wrap that in a language that they would speak, they would understand, but also has a bit of a personality around how you positioned your brand and what your brand personality is, your brand voice, I guess.
Susan, did you have a?
Yeah, thank you, Tom. The one thing that's really coming to mind for me is that as a copywriter, I obviously deal with a lot of businesses and create web content for them.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of businesses that I've worked with have never done any branding of their own. They kind of, they've created a logo. They've had generally they have a logo. They have a sense of who they are, but they haven't drilled down deeply into the values and the tribe and the pain they resolve for their clients, the detailed analytical work that you're talking about here. And what I find the challenge is, as the writer for the website, is, well, I don't have that information at my fingertips, and really,
Mm-hmm.
if I want to do a great job as the writer, I need to know who their audience is and what they're dealing with. So
Sure.
I'm a big proponent of businesses getting their branding done, because it just makes my job all that much easier. I can guess, and I'm a good guesser because I've been writing for 30 years now.
And you're very intuitive too, so that helps.
Well, sure I am, but there is absolutely no replacement for the absolute truth that my clients have come up with themselves. So.
Well, and it's interesting that you say that, because what I've done too with my process, the Get Real branding process, is I've created an online program. So it's a 5-week, I'm extending it actually into a 90-day program, where I take people through the Get Clear, Get Creative, Get Clients process, and I package it in such a way that people can do it online. And a lot of my clients, or a lot of people that I'm attracting to this, are people like yourselves that are writers, marketers, that haven't really found kind of that the magic sauce in terms of getting to those nuggets and really understanding. So I'm always happy to share, the insights and the process with people that do the work that you do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Key stuff. Yeah.
I remember reading a while ago. I'm not sure where it came from, but there is when you talk about the language that we use, because I think one of the misconceptions that we have as experts is that we have to use a different kind of language that elevates us from the non-experts. But sometimes then we kind of fall into the trap, it seems to me, that of using that language to impress people, and we'll use that language to attract people, but it's not the language that they use. And there's a phrase, it's been around for a while, I heard it years ago. It says, talk to the dog in the language of the dog.
Yeah.
And I have now 2 dogs, not by choice. But I realize that when if that what they hear from me is just a different kind of barking. And no matter what words I use or how I use them, it's just barking to them.
Blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. And there's a great Charlie Brown, some of the Charlie Brown,
the mother,
what you say to the dog, and then what the dog hears, blah, 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 blah. Or bark, bark, bark. And when I'm working with my clients, particularly around the area of keyword research and so forth, I say, listen, if you have a receptionist, you answer the phone yourself. Keep a notepad. How do your clients, when they call you up to find out if you can solve their problem, what language do they describe their problem in?
Exactly.
We tend not to do that. We kind of ignore that. We translate it into our own language. And we lose maybe the most valuable competitive intelligence that we can get. What our client is how our client is describing their pain. It doesn't matter how we describe it, it's how do they describe it, because otherwise we'll never hook up. So anyway, I think that's really an important kind of concept to go by. So
yeah, and it's also important to recognize that the way we speak is so much different than the way we write. And often what I'll do is, I'll speak into a microphone or and then have it transcribed so that I can actually hear that, regular language. Let's just, be real here.
Yeah. Very, very, very true.
So coming back, kind of circling back around to tribes and so forth, how do you then, what's the process you go through to find your tribe or to find that ideal client? What's the brand's role in all of that? How does it attract that? If you're branded right, if your brand experience is right, what's going to happen as a result of that to bring in the kind of people you want to do business with and want to do business with you?
Well, and a large part of when you have brand clarity, when you get the clarity, and when we bring that brand to life, and it creates a personality, it has a voice, it has a look and feel. Think about your brand as a separate person, and I will do this exercise with people. I'll say, imagine there's this person standing in the distance, and what values do they stand for? How would they speak? What is the language they would have? What are they wearing? We could create an actual personality, an identity for that brand, and then always go back to ask that question. Now we know so clearly who this brand is and what the brand stands for, the values are, and how it appears in the world. Would this brand go to this networking event, or would this brand speak in front of this audience? It's really kind of using that brand as a guiding post for a lot of business decisions too, because often people will come up with an idea for a product and say, well, that's a great idea, but is this really congruent or really integrated with what your brand stands for? So I often say that once you get your brand figured out, a lot of your larger business decisions are answered, or can be answered through the lens of that brand. when making brand decisions about going out and getting, attracting your tribe, I generally go, and have conversations. I do a lot of speaking. I think speaking is probably the #1 way that I get my content out to people. I love to share a lot of my content because I truly believe that the more you give, the more you get. It's an abundance mentality. It's really about proving and providing a sample of what it is that you have to offer. And I've done it myself. I mean, if somebody gives me a lot of content, I think, man, this is for free. Imagine what I'm going to get if I'm going to work with somebody. So, it's the value of what you bring to people, and it's not about you pushing your brand out to them. It's about really, heartfelt caring about what it is that they need and demonstrating that relationships aren't built on you pushing yourself on people. It's about you being interested in and providing value. So knowing really clearly who your tribe is and then just finding out where they hang out.
What you're saying too...
Go ahead.
Sorry, Tom. Well, what you're saying too, Janet, reminds me of kind of how I approach, how I made the transition from being worried about sales and marketing and thinking, oh, I don't want to be pushing my stuff on people. I don't want to come on as the hard sale person because that isn't who I am. Mm-hmm. But when I myself made the transition to thinking, how can I serve these people? What have I got that I can serve people with? And that just made all the difference in the world for me. Was I can serve easily. I'm maybe too good at that sometimes. But that sort of idea that we aren't here to push ourselves on other people. That somehow there's a match between what we offer and what people need and want. That somehow they'll come together.
Absolutely. And just on the point of sampling, sorry, Tom, I just want to add this point because even when I was working in the big agencies and they would do research on what is the best way to convert a sale, and bar none, no matter what, what other kind of magical things we could come up with to incent people to buy something, coupons, whatever it was sampling. Sampling was the #1 sales conversion tool in the consumer packaged goods world, and it's true today. I mean, how many things can you get for free online? It's definitely a conversion tool. I mean, a lot of people are just out to get the freebies, but if you show that you have value and it's something that they need, then absolutely best thing to do.
Yeah, and I found that to be particularly. I mentioned earlier I'd worked with a lot of speakers, and early on I said, it's that kind of give to get sort of a mentality, and it reminds me, I often have brunch at Costco. I don't know if you have Costco's in Canada, but it's the big warehouse store. And you go there, and there are dozens of people, offering their wares. So, we just go and have our Sunday brunch there, which is kind of pathetic. But
I've done it too.
But it occurs to me it's the same kind of a thing in a content world. And one of the struggles I had with my speaker clients early on was they would agree to give stuff away, but they would give stuff away that was no longer of any use to them. That was old stuff, old content lying around. And of course, they're kind of clearing out their attics, so to speak. And I think that did a disservice to their prospective client base and also to them, because then what people saw was old stuff. They didn't see the new stuff that would excite them. And recently, I don't know if it was John Morrow, who's a editor of Copy Blogger and kind of a big content guy. I think he's the one who had said this, and I know it's not original, but he said, what you should give away to somebody, that sample, should be of such value that when they get it and they digest it, they say, I would have paid for this.
Absolutely.
And as small businessmen, that's kind of entrepreneurs who kind of rely on our output and work product. That's sometimes a hard concept to get. But if I see a beautifully built brick wall, I don't go and I examine it and I watch the brick layer laying the wall. My response typically, if I need a brick wall, is not to go and buy a trowel and some bricks. It's to contact that guy and say, I love what you did. Can you do it for me? Yeah. Some people will do it, the do-it-yourself route, and they'll end up with a do-it-yourself result. if you're truly an expert, know what you're doing, they'll recognize the value. So anyway, and I'm so on board with that. I think that's such a key, important concept.
Yeah, you know who I first heard that from? There's this guy called Tom Gray in Denver, Colorado.
Yeah, nothing I do is original. I am the least original guy out there, but you don't need to be original. There is so much. Sometimes just passing on. I think that's the beauty of Twitter. As a matter of fact, it's not so much sharing your own knowledge, but inviting people into the stuff that you know or the resources that you use.
Curating your content.
Well, one of the things that I found so fascinating, I wrote a blog about this a couple of years ago about this trend with telesummits, online telesummits, and that you can attend, a series of expert speakers, and I'm actually holding a telesummit at called Back to Branding the first week back after Labor Day. And the theory behind it I found so fascinating, because you're basically bringing together, 5 or 6 or a dozen experts to speak about a topic that is of high value to the listener. They come in, they listen to the recording for free for 24 hours. They can access it, all they want for 24 hours. They can listen into all of the content. There's offers being given. And at the end, which I thought was really bizarre, is after 24 hours, after the end of this whole week-long telesummit, you actually get to buy it. So it's almost like this reverse mentality. It's here it is for free, and if you really like it, you can buy it, which I thought was brilliant. And people do. I've done it. I mean, and then, people go back and you can listen to the recordings again as you need them and as it applies to your business. But I think what online has done for us is really change the way that we market our business and how we share information and how we interact with people. The online world, is a whole other beast in terms of how we brand our business. Not how we brand our business, but how, creating that brand experience.
So Jen, sorry, Tom, what were you?
No, go ahead, please.
Well, no, I was just thinking it was about time to hear what Janet's got coming up for people, and because I know she's got a lot of things cooking, and the Telesummit series sounds very juicy.
It is.
How can people get more of you?
Well, my site right now is in development for the Back to Branding, but the website is backtobranding.com, and we are literally about to launch that in terms of getting people to opt in to find out about the Telesummit coming up the first week back in September. What I've also got coming up is sort of a 21-day mini brand makeover, which I'm really excited about as well, and that will be basically a daily tip, tool, instruction that you can apply right away. So really small things that you can apply to your business and your branding right away, so that you can actually make some real-time changes in your business over those 21 days. And then that launches into my 3-month boot camp, my 90 days of Get Real branding, and that will take you through the whole Get Clear, Get Creative, Get Clients process that I take my clients through one-on-one. But this one was online in a group setting. So those are sort of my big 3 events that are coming up, and I'm very excited about it because there's a lot going on, a lot of work, and I am getting such incredible response from this stuff. My clients are thrilled about the processes that they're going through, seeing some really good results. So I'm excited about it too.
And if they want to connect with you through email, what email address would you?
So they can.
How can they connect through your website or?
So they can email me directly, and I'm happy to connect with people. I do respond to my emails personally, Janet@getrealbranding.com. And if somebody emails me through the call or through this Hangout, if they're interested in finding out more, I'm happy to offer a little brand boost. So if they're serious about getting clear about their brand and want some strategies and some help working that through, I send out what I call my strategic brand barometer. So we sort of see where you're at with your brand, where what needs to be done, and I offer a bit of time with that as well. So if people want to email me at Janet at getrealbranding.com. I'm happy to engage and offer whatever I can in service to small business.
And she's a humanitarian too.
Oh, well.
She definitely is one of those. And kind of small animals. I know that because she likes nature.
Yeah, exactly. So.
Well, and when is your book coming out, Jen? Do you have a timeline on that?
Well, the first deadline sort of passed, or is passing a little faster than I had hoped. I'm really looking to get the book out by the end of the year, and that's my current deadline. So maybe a Christmas book. That would be my ideal. So
will it be available on
that.
Amazon and on other and
All
other
of
traditional
those things.
channels?
Yep,
okay, good.
Absolutely, yeah.
Good. So if you go to getrealbranding.com and you submit an email address, you'll keep everybody aware of the progress and the availability of all this good stuff, as well as the boot camps. And I'm looking at your website now, and it's and for anybody listening in, I would recommend that you bookmark it as a resource for how to get real with your branding. So
thank you.
We very much appreciate the time you spent. It is available online and will be available on YouTube, and we'll provide a link for all of our websites to get it out to the people who need to hear this. So again, thanks so much, and thank you, Susan.
Thank you, Janet, and thank you, Tom, and I hope everybody has a great rest of the day.
Yeah, it was a pleasure chatting with you guys today. You have a good one.